Have you guys heard about architect, distinguished engineer, fellow, director, engineering manager, and wondered what do all these terms stand for? How the software engineering job titles add up? Hi everyone, I'm Vinod and welcome to Career Bolt. In today's discussion, we'll jump by talking about software job hierarchy. In any typical job, when it comes to software engineering, most people begin life as either a software engineer or an associate software engineer. And what happens is that if you look at it from a down to top structure in terms of hierarchy, you begin life if you're experienced as a software engineer or an associate software engineer. You move on to become a senior software engineer after a couple of years. And then it begins to get interesting. There is roles which are like an engineering manager or a tech lead, which are very similar to each other. Above that, at level 5, I'm talking about as you get promoted, what happens is that you can begin to choose different directions. You can get into more of the people management side of the world. And most companies tend to recognize that employees can either grow very technically, being a solo contributor and not managing people, or they can grow in terms of managing people. So if you decide to grow in terms of managing people, you would become a senior engineering manager, move on to be a director, senior director, and VP of engineering, and so on. This basically means that you're working with dozens of people, if not 50 to 100 people at the level of VP, and you're getting work done by managing people and having technical expertise. There are also others who decide to follow a technical career path, which means that you basically become an architect, senior architect, or a principal architect, or you could choose to be a principal software engineer, a senior principal software engineer, or a distinguished engineer. So this is the technical career track. So the technical career tracks is where you pretty much do not interact with large groups of people. You kind of keep doing your work. And after you reach the level at the level 7 of being a principal architect or a distinguished engineer, you would actually move on to becoming a title called an engineering fellow. So an engineering fellow is a very, very prestigious title and not commonly given to people. But if you're very good in your job, it's equivalent to a VP of engineering jobs. And most companies are very careful about giving this job title to folks, whether you're in IBM, Google. You probably are at the end of your career by the time you become an engineering fellow. So let's now dig deeper into what these different job titles are. So typically a person joins as an associate software engineer or a software engineer with 0 to 3 years of work experience. So the major job tasks are to build software, launch and debug applications like quality checks. Debugging is a big chunk of this work. This is basically the dirty work, which not everyone is super interested in, but this is how companies work. Companies are different from research institutions in terms of you will have to build programs which is done through coding by different software engineers. They all write code a little differently. So you'll have to debug these applications, make sure all of these work together in tandem. The skills required are you to understand programming languages, operating systems, algorithms, and databases. As you move on after 3 to 4 years, you would move on from being a software engineer to being a senior software engineer. And this basically involves a role where you're seeing the overall software development and you're coaching the software engineers and associate software engineers one-on-one. So the skills required is very basic architecture understanding, advanced code design, because you're managing a lot of code written by the software engineers, coaching and training people. So what happens as an engineering manager or tech lead is that you have around 6 to 9 years of work experience and you moved on from being a senior software engineer to now managing smaller teams of people. So you're managing a team responsible for building complex software solutions. You need to understand advanced architecture. You need to understand systems design to build scalable solutions for the company, and also pretty much understand program management and project management in lots of detail. So as you move on and build your career, then it gets interesting. It's very difficult to exactly predict where you're going to be, but if you're getting the right skills in the right amount of time, within 9 to 13 years, you're probably more looking at a role which is of a senior engineering manager. Now, if you choose to go down the technical career path, then you're either an architect or a principal software engineer. And likewise, if you have the upper end in terms of 13 to 15 years of work experience, you could be more of a director engineering, you could be a senior architect or a senior principal software engineer. And in these roles, you kind of own the process. You look at the product thinking in terms of the big picture. You also manage people. There's a technical leadership role, which is at play here. You also have expertise, which is way, way beyond what most of the other people bring to the table, including the engineering managers and the senior software engineers. You have to be responsible to know end to end of the product in terms of the technical details, and you should be an expert in that space. So advanced architecture, system design is very important to be in this role. Likewise, when you're being a senior architect, you build on your experience as an architect. Likewise with a senior principal software engineer. A director role is typically very difficult to find in software companies because the senior engineering manager role to director roles is a big jump, and you need to spend enough time. Not everyone makes it within 9 to 13 years of work experience, but if you keep spending time and get more and more work experience, ultimately you could be given charge as a director where you're looking after large teams of people. After this point, it gets a little murky. You have 15 to 18 years of work experience. Are you going to be a director? Are you going to be senior director? This all depends on how much responsibility is given to you in terms of the organization's technological needs and the R&D capabilities. So you're doing a lot of things. You're looking at budgeting, you're looking at hiring, you're looking at people skills, strategic thinking, systems design, you're working with teams of architects. By the time you reach the level of being a senior director, a lot of these skills become very important. You could be equivalently in a individual technical career track. You could be a principal architect or a distinguished engineer. Beyond this, if you're touching 17 to 18 years of work experience or more than 20 years of work experience, you could become a VP, a vice president in a company, but that requires a hell lot of understanding of all these different spaces. You also need to build products and make it very successful. So as a senior director, if the products you make are very successful, then there could be a small chance that you would become a VP. Typically a VP or a fellow is the final step in a company hierarchy for lots and lots of people. You need to be extremely lucky to go beyond it, but pretty much you are paid very well, and it takes you decades to get to this position. You are also looking after huge teams, or you have a technical expertise which probably nobody else within the company has. If you're a fellow at, say, Google or IBM, the number of such people are extremely, extremely limited. So it's so difficult to get these promotions. So hopefully this video was interesting in terms of helping you understand what's required at different levels within a software engineering company and as you grow your career. Let me know if you have any comments or if you have questions. Do subscribe and like this channel so that you can keep updated about the new videos which get pushed out every now and then by me. Cheers, everybody. Bye-bye.